Good evening and welcome to It's About Time. I'm Trudy and I'm here this evening to actually share with you Job. We're continuing in the book of Job, and I will be covering the 10th through the 13th chapter tonight. So, what we find here is that when we're talking to Job at this particular point, Job has gone through quite a bit with his friends coming and actually finding him in despair, and things were not like they had been, and relationships had changed. So we see here that Job is at this point of desperation based on what's taken place with him in his life, and he's at the point of such despair that if he had the opportunity to talk to God, he would want to ask him why. Why does this happen? Why did this happen to me? And so it starts off, he says, I loathe my own life. I will give full vent to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why thou dost contend with me. So he goes at this point to say that if I had the opportunity to talk to God, I would want to just straight up ask him, God, why are you doing this to me? Why are all these things befalling me without reason? Because as you remember, when we started out in the beginning of this book, we talked about Job being a blameless man, an upright. He had excellent character. He had all the things that he should be. But here we find out that once again he's contending and he's trying to figure out why are these things happening to him. And he said, it is right for thee indeed to oppress, to reject the labor of thy hands. He's saying, you made me, you molded me. So why is it that you are now turning your back on me? Because how could all of this happen to me, all of this suffering that I'm going through when you are the creator and you created me? I just can't understand this. What did I do that was so wrong that I'm in this particular place? Because the punishment that I'm going through would be that of what a wicked man would get. Because remember when we started in the first chapter, that we talked about the theology or the embracement of the idea that they believe good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. So here he's like, I'm questioning what's going on. I have not been a bad person, but this is what I'm dealing with. Then he goes on, he says, Has thy eyes, thou eyes of flesh, or does thy see as a man sees? How are you looking at me, God? I just don't understand this. Because if you could see what was going on with me, you would have some type of compassion or care for me because I have not done anything. I have not gone against your will, your way, your word, but why is this happening? So as we go through continuing in 10, 10 really kind of gives us more of Job's plea of what he would say if he had the opportunity. Kind of like when things happen to us and we go, if I ever get the chance to say this, I'm going to let them know all of these things. Well, this is the part that Job was. But what we find is that Job, in spite of everything that he was going through, that he never sinned. He never sinned against God. He had complaints, he had feelings. You could see that he was human in this thing, but then he still kept the reverence for God, even in his approach and in his own agony, how he actually addressed him. Then he says that thy hands fashioned and made me altogether. Every part of who I am, you have actually made me. And this is what's going on. And I just cannot understand that if I am your creation, why would you do this to me? Then it goes, remember now that thou hast made me as clay. So he's reminding him that you took the time to make man out of nothing. You took dust and you made and formed man, and you spent a lot of time as the creator. So why? Why am I going through this? Then he goes on and says, Thou hast granted me life and loving kindness, and thou cares hast preserved my spirit. Yet these things thou hast concealed in thy heart. I know that this is within thee. If I sin, then thou wouldst take note of me. So here again, he's reminding that if he had the opportunity to talk to God, he was like, I have not sinned. I have not sinned. I am still the same person that before these calamities happened, how you viewed me, I'm still that person. Nothing has changed in my life. So as he goes on and he continues in 10, he goes, if I am wicked, woe to me. He says, and if I am righteous, I dare not lift up my head. I am sated with disgrace and conscious of my misery. He says, look how I'm looking out in these streets. Just look at me. I'm the one that upholds. I'm the one that helps. I'm the one that reverence. I'm the one that, in spite of all of this calamity and tragedy and grief happened to me, yet would I still hold on to my praise for you, my worship for you. How could this happen to me? And this is the state that the mental state that Job is in at this point, which is, he's trying to figure out, what did I do to deserve this type of punishment? And should my head be lifted up, thou wouldest hunt me like a lion. Now, if I was prideful and all these other things, and going against your will and being boastful and deceitful and things like that, you would come get me. But I've not done these things. Have you ever been in life where there's just nothing that makes sense to you? That you've not done anything that would actually cause you to go through certain things, persecution, isolation, sickness and infirmities, all these different things. And you've always so called do the right things, but these calamities, they befell you. And you're just trying to figure out somewhere, get some type of semblance of, why did I miss something? Did I look something? How does this happen to me? So this is where Brother Job is. And we have to really understand that at this point of agony, he's in a mental state. And we have to look at the capacity of who Job was and just how much he endured. It lets you have a different type of respect for Job. You know, um, we're talking about superior suffrage. I mean, a lot of us probably could not even go through some of the suffrage that he did. But this is what we're talking about. Then he goes, When thou hast brought me out of the womb, would that I had died and no eye had seen me. All these things, if I'm such a wicked and bad person, the punishment that I'm receiving, wouldn't it have been better if I had not even been born? That no one had ever seen me, that they wouldn't take the time to name me, they wouldn't take the time to care for me. I just wouldn't have even existed because I can't make sense of this. Then he says, Before I go, and I shall not return to the land of darkness and deep shadow, the land of utter gloom as darkness itself. All before we have that Job didn't need anything. Job was, he was that person. He was walking in alignment in the will of God, and everywhere he went, everyone knew that it was God. He never tried to take credit for anything that God was doing. And here he was, once the one that walked in the light, now finding himself that he was walking in darkness. He felt isolated and alone. So the land of utter gloom as darkness itself, of the deep shadows without order, and which shines as the darkness. He was in a bad place. Have you ever been sometimes that you just can't see your way out of stuff, and your mind has a way to just close in on you, and things just get dark and deep and you don't know which way to go and how it works. This is where we have Job. Now imagine, all the afflictions that he's had that came upon him. He's literally sitting homeless in a garbage dump with a bunch of sores and things like that all over him. And he's trying to figure out, what did I've lost everything and I have not done anything. And I know how I felt that when you know that you've not done anything and you found yourself in a point of isolation or non-inclusion and things like that, but you've not done anything to anyone. You become the number one enemy, but you still have been yourself and you've not done anything. So that's 10. We're going to move on to 11. So 11, we have Brother Zophar. And we'll talk about him and his character because like Sister Lynette referred to, kind of like, what about your friends? This is one of those scenarios about what about your friends, because we get to see the character of his friend. And Zophar the Naamathite answered, shall a multitude of words go unanswered, and a talkative man be acquitted? Should your boast silence man, and shall your scoff and none rebuke? Now here's his friend. So what we're starting to talk about now is that his friend is trying to come for him. He's like, I'm sitting here with you and I'm watching all these things befall you. Now you have to remember, these are all men that are very wise in law, theological law. They understand it. We find like Eliphaz and Bildad, they were saying what they needed to say. But Zophar was known as a very quiet man. So he didn't have much to say. But then when he did say something, we see that it's full of sarcasm, because he did not come compassionately at Job to try to bring assurance to him using this theological understanding, but he came more so in the frame of condemnation to him. And instead of absolutely shady boots all day long, how he's coming at him, because basically he was saying, look here, I've been sitting with you all this time and I'm seeing all these things happening to you, and you ain't telling the truth, dude. You straight up not giving it, because something happened, you did something, and you holding it, so as they say, hold your cards tight to your chest. You are holding it so tight, even in all of this suffering, you won't let it go. So he's still plying and twisting that knife into Job, with his accusations, and talking to him as a superior person now, because he's saying that what I used to think you were, I'm starting to see you're not all about that. That's not your life. You've been living a double life somewhere, because there's no way that calamity and tragedy and grief could strike any person like that. So then he goes on and he says, for you have said, my teaching is pure. So this is what he's telling him. Job, you said that your teaching is pure, and I am innocent in your eyes. But would that God might speak and open his lips against you and show you the secrets of wisdom, for sound wisdom has two sides. Now then the God Now then, that God forgets a part of your iniquity. He's saying, so there's the truth and there's the other side. You keep telling me out of your mouth that you're telling me the truth. But the example of what's going on here is that you're telling a lie. You straight up. You're not giving it like it is. And you're holding this thing. And this is what's going on. Because he said that if it had been the other way, don't you think God would have came to your rescue? God would only punish you because of the punishment that's necessary for the wicked. Can you discover the depths of God? Can you discover the limits of the Almighty? They are high as the heavens. What can you do? Deeper than the Sheol, which is hell. What can you know? He said, so what is it that you got going on here? Because I'm really getting frustrated sitting here with you, going through all these things and you're just not being truthful. Have you ever been in a place where you know that you've told the truth, you know you haven't done wrong, and that all the accusations come at you and they tear your character down? See, we might not experience things like Job, where we're going through all of the lesions and all those other things. But when people come against our characters and they do character assassinations, this is the same way. We feel defenseless, even though we're screaming inside, you should know me. You should know how I am and who I am, and that nothing has changed. But yet, you sit here and look down on me and you condemn me, although you say you know me. We are supposed to serve the same God, the merciful God. You don't understand it. I don't understand it. But why come at me? And this is kind of where we find that Job is at this point. It says, its measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. If he passes by or shuts up or calls an assembly, who can restrain him? For he knows false men. Here again. He's like, you lying. You just lying. Dude, stop it. Repent of your sins. God will be merciful enough to help you out. But stop it. So then he keeps going on and he sees iniquity without investigating. And an idiot will become intelligent when a foal of a wild donkey is born a man. Now he said, you are a lie and the truth is not in you. He said, you're an idiot. You are just a fool. And that is exactly what he's telling him at this point, because he said that in this particular 12th verse, where it says, when a foal of a wild donkey is born a man. Now we know that that is not even possible. That is just so outrageous that he goes and he actually approaches him that way. That when a wild donkey. Now we're not even talking about a tame. We're talking about a wild donkey, something you can't even control. That is actually born a man. That goes against all of nature and everything else. So it was the insults after the insults. They just kept coming, and kept coming. And then it says, if you would direct your heart right and spread out your hands to him, he said, repent. If you would just repent, this would not even be going on, Job. What are you doing? And do not let wickedness dwell in your tents. So he's saying behind closed doors, the stuff that you're doing ain't right. So if you would not live that way, then we would have you healed and not in this situation, because the things that you were doing behind closed doors, God is all seeing, all knowing God. So he knows everything that's going on. He said, but your mouth and the truth don't have anything to do with each other. Now, this is his friend. This is somebody who's supposed to be his boy. They came and sat with him in complete silence for 7 days. This is his boy. But look where he is at this point. Then it says, for you would forget your troubles as water that have passed by you. You would remember it, and your life would be brighter than Monday. He says the relief is there. But as long as you keep holding on to this lie that you have not done anything, that you are blameless, that you don't understand, he says you're going to continue to suffer. Then he goes, and darkness would be like the morning. Then you would trust because there is hope, and you would look around and rest securely. You would lie down and none would disturb you, and many would entreat your favors. He's saying that only if you just tell the truth, stop all of this, that you will get this refreshment, that what you've gone through wouldn't even matter. It would be like a memory, a passing, a fleeting memory, that everything would be better, that it would be bright, that Monday, Monday, the start over, you would have all of this available to you. But if you would stop lying, but the eyes of the wicked will fail, and there will be no escape for them, and their hope is to breathe their last. So he's just taking him all the way down at this point. He's not leaving him any room. He's telling them, you keep it up, you're going to die just like this with that lie you got going on. Because God cannot do anything to anyone like this that is unjust. We serve a just God, and there's no way that you were going through these things. So then we go into 12. And then we see what I call 12. 12 is like the ultimate clapback. Because we have it now that Job is saying, then Job responded. He says, truly then you are the people, and with you wisdom will die. So he's saying, y'all the one that's supposed to know and have sense and understand theological studies and all these different things. And you should know me enough to know that none of this coincides with me, who I am. But yet you still come at me. And all that you say that you know, it's going to die with you because you don't understand what you're doing. But I have intelligence as well as you. Don't call me stupid. Don't come for me. I'm just as smart as you. I know exactly what you know. Because remember when we started out, these were his friends. He was an upstanding person. They all shared the same morals and values. But now, because of what befell Job, now there is an assertion that he wasn't who he was supposed to be. But Job is clapping back to him, saying, I am who I am. I know what I know. And he says, and who does not know such things as these? I am a joke to my friends, the one who called on God and he answered him. The just and blameless man is a joke. Remember, we started that he was a just man, he was found blameless. This is how we built his character. This is what people thought of him. So now, because he's going through all these things, he's considered a joke. Everybody's looking at him and like, you're okay. You say this, but you're lying. Can you imagine telling the truth with the last of what you have, pleading your case, and those that are supposed to have your back have now turned on you? They're laughing at you. They're condoning the things that are being said. So we only concentrating on these particular friends, but we're not talking about what's happening in the neighborhoods. How these other people looking at it. Because see, these are the things that they have been preaching and teaching people, but now you see all of this calamity befall him, and they're like, "You are fake, you are fraud. That's why all that stuff's happening to you." So he's fighting. He's fighting much more than what's going on with his friends. He's fighting what's going on in his community as well. So he says, the just and blameless man is a joke. He who is at ease holds calamity in contempt, as prepared for those whose feet slip. The tents of the destroyer prosper, and those who provoke God are secure. He's saying, so what I'm seeing that's happening right now is that those that are not following the will and way of God, they're doing all their stuff behind closed doors, yet they're not suffering like I am. They're not going through the same exact things. And then it says, whom God brings into their power. But now ask the beasts and let them teach you, and the birds of heaven and let them tell you, or speak to the earth and let it teach you, and let the fish of the sea declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? He's like, I'm not a fool. I'm not a fool. You can ask anybody what is exactly going on, and we all know that only God could do this. I'm aware of this. I am aware of this. In whose hands is the life of every living thing? He's asking them. So he's going at this point to basically say, you've called me an idiot, but the birds could tell you what's going on. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out this, that God had to allow this, otherwise it could not be. But my question has always been, what did I do? Because it said that I was blameless and an upright man. So he's clapping back at this point. So he's telling me, you calling me all these things. Let me handle you for a minute. And he says, does not the ears test words? Don't you hear words that are coming? You can process it. As the palate tastes as if it's food, all my senses are working. Does your senses work? Wisdom is with aged men, with long life is understanding. We all know the more that you live, the more that you learn, and the more that you understand. This is what he's telling him. Job is a good clapbacker. He's telling them really good. And then Job goes on a little further and kind of speaks of the power of God. He says, with him are wisdom and might. To him belongs counsel and understanding. Behold, he tears down and it cannot be rebuilt. He imprisons a man and there can be no release. That when God says and puts his stamp on something, there's no turning back. This is what Job is saying. I understand all of this, that when God allows something to happen, there is no undoing because he has put his seal, justified it, and it is what it is. I can take away your freedom. I can take away anything that you had established and not allow it to come back. This is the power of God, which he understands. He says, with him are strength and sound wisdom. God is wisdom. The misled and the misleader belong to him. They all belong to God. I know who everyone is and everyone's particular uh, source of ownership is. God owns everything and everyone, the good as well as the bad. Then he says, he makes counselors walk barefoot and he makes fools of judges. He loosens the bonds of kings and binds the loins with a girdle. He makes the priests walk back barefoot. So it's like he has the ability, when he says he makes them walk barefoot, he stripped them. So if you were not walking according to how God had intended to, and when he brought his wrath on you, it didn't matter who you were. That's why we went through the portion of identifying a judge, a king, a priest. These are all people that had authority. But when it comes down to God's authority, nothing can circumvent God's authority. So Job is letting Zophar know this, that I understand all these things. You're not telling me nothing new. And then he goes on, he says, he pours contempt on the nobles and loosens the belt of the strong. Everything that the strong had, that they built up armies and forts and forges and alliances and stuff like that, what was once strong is now loose. It's weak. That's what God can do. I understand the power of God. This is how he's clapping back at him. He said, he makes the nations great, then destroys them. He enlarges a nation, then leads them away. He deprives of intelligence the chiefs of the earth's people and makes them wander in a pathless waste. So he's saying, if you remember the story of the children of Israel, how they once wanted God so badly and trusted that he could do everything for them. And as they were led out of bondage, they went in and suffered in the wilderness because of their disobedience. So this particular verse kind of referred back that to that for me when he says he enlarges the nations, then leads them away. He deprives of intelligence the chiefs of the earth's people and makes them wander in a pathless waste. Remember, a trip that should have only taken them 3 days, it ended up taking them 40 years, and only two survived. So this is the power of God. They grope in darkness with no light. They grope, you're just grabbing, you just can't see your way. And he makes them stagger like drunken men. So when it's dark, you can't see, you trying to feel and all this stuff to get around to where you need to get. This is how he's saying that when God's power comes upon a person, that he's causing punishment or judgment on them. These are all the calamities that befall him. So he's telling Zophar, don't come for me. I understand all this stuff. And he detailed it out completely for him to understand that I'm not an idiot, that I understand more than you're giving me credit for. And here's why. Then we get on to 13. It says, Job says his friends, uh, it says, behold, my eyes have seen all this. My ears has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you. Okay? Job is just laying the law of the land at this point. They came for him. He tried to politely tell them, but now he's telling them, look, I am who I was before all this started, as astute and as studied as you are. So he says, but I would speak to the Almighty, because when we started off, this was the point of when Job would say, if he had an opportunity to speak with God, that he would want to ask him these questions. He wanted to ask the right questions, not to offend God, not to be in violation with God, but just ask him. Could he let him understand that if he had broken anything, if he had done anything to cause offense, because as far as what he looked at, his life hadn't changed. He hadn't did anything that would have displeased God when God was so pleased with him. So this is, this question where he is at this point. And he says, but I would speak to the Almighty and desire to argue with God. But you smear with lies. You are all worthless physicians. Oh, that you would be completely silent and that it would become your wisdom. Please hear my argument and listen to the contentions in my lips. So, when you talk about contention, it means that you're conflicted about something. You're conflicted. You just don't understand. Job is just conflicted about what is going on with him and why this is happening to him. Will you speak what is unjust for God and speak what is deceitful for him? Will you show partiality for him? Will you contend for God? Will it be well when he examines you? Or will you deceive him as one deceives a man? He will surely reprove you if you secretly show partiality. Will not his majesty terrify you and the dread of him fall on you? Your memorable sayings are proverbs of ashes. Your defense are defense of clay. So he's going down all these things that were said to him, and he's coming back and reciting these things back to them. That everything that they were coming to tell him about who God is and that he was outside of the will of God. But he's giving them case in point by point, about what God is, what God will do. Would he not do these things? And but then we go further on. He said, even though all these things that are happening to me, I still put my trust in God. We'll see as we go through here. He says, be silent before me so that I may speak. I've heard you talk enough about me. I heard you condemn me. I heard you not uplift me, but tear me down. So be quiet. I don't want to hear you right now. Then let come on me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? So he's saying, you've called me an idiot. Why would I go and let you change who I am, my belief, and knowing that I am righteous and blameless? I'm an upright man to make you feel better. I still am convicted by who I am in God, who I am to God. I might not understand why I'm going through all of this, but I know that I have not done anything to offend him. So if it be his will for this for my life, you see, Job is settling into these things, but he knows that there is vindication coming for him. Then it goes and says, this also will be my salvation, for a godless man may not come before his presence. So he said that nobody that does not believe can even get before him. So he's still in this clapback phase where he's giving this to them, you know, I'd say from a theological standpoint, because it's almost it's considered poetry how he's writing out this point where he's saying points and establishing points all through this, but with a beautiful flow. And he says, listen carefully to my speech and let my declaration fill your ears. Behold, now I have prepared my case. I know that I will be vindicated. See, so he's standing on what the word he's standing on is what he started with from the beginning. That when all the calamities fell on him, what was the thing that he did? He continued to praise God. Didn't understand. Even in his wisdom that he had, he could not understand, but yet he never turned from God. He never cursed God. Remember, this was the reason that all of these things befell on him, that Satan tried him and brought everything that he could. He threw the whole kitchen in the sink at him just to see that if he could get him to curse God. But we see Job is establishing himself and saying who he is. And he says, who will contend with me? For then I would be silent and die. Only two things do not do to me. Then I will not hide from thy face. Remove thy hands from me, and let not the dread of thee terrify me. Then call, and I will answer, or let me speak, then reply to me. So he's going through all these things that, as his friends were going through and mocking him and making him feel um, unworthy, and that everything that happened to him, it's his fault, you know. And he's going back and talking about that if he had a chance to speak with God and the things that he would actually tell him or say to him, and that once God realized who he was, and that he was not warranted the suffrage that he went through, that he would be vindicated. This is the feeling. So he's still holding on to the faith. In spite of everything that he's going through, what he's looking like and all this stuff, he's still holding on. Let me hurry. And then it says, why dost thou hide thy face and consider me thine enemy? Wilt thou cause a driven leaf to tremble? Or wilt thou pursue the dry chaff? So we know the dry chaff, what happens is that when you back in the days where they used to do harvest the wheat, and there's an actual skin that covers the wheat, and when you actually kind of pound and beat it, the wheat and the chaff separates, and the wind usually blows the chaff away. So this is what he's talking about. That the wheat is the value part of it. The chaff is considered not. So this is what he's saying about his life, that my life is valuable. Then he says, "For thou dost write bitter things against me, and does make me to inherit the iniquities of my youth." So all these things that sometimes when we get to certain places in life and people see people down, what they do is start to search for things back in their past and write about things that they did. All of us have past, and that's just what they are, past. They don't have anything to do with what's going on right now. And his friends have drug him through everything, thinking that they were helping him. That's the craziest part about it, is that they really thought that they were doing right by him to get him to confess so that his suffrage could stop. But yet they lost belief in Job and all of the affliction. So then he goes on and he says, "Thou dost put my feet in the stocks, and thou dost watch all my path. Thou dost set a limit for the soles of my feet, while I am decaying like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth eaten." So at this point, he felt like, I got these friends, they've lost trust in me. I've lost everything. And here they sit here and continue to ridicule me at my lowest point, and yet no comfort comes to me. But yet did he hold fast to his belief, even in his misery. He never gave up. And that's sometimes the lessons that we have to figure out for ourselves as well. That in spite of what it looks like, in spite of what it feels like, never give up. That if you're in right standing with God, God has you. If He leads you to it, He will bring you through it. If it's God's will, it's God's will. So this is exactly what Brother Job was going through. It was God's will for his life, because he was proving that in spite of the things that would happen, that he would still remain faithful to him. Well, this is Trudy. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've learned something. You've got something from this. Make sure that you join us tomorrow at 6 o'clock here back on YouTube. And we are going to finish digging into the book of Job. Such a interesting book. And I think after we've gone through this, you will have a new appreciation for Job and his steadfastness. God bless you. Good night.